Okay, colleagues, good evening and welcome to the Cabinet meeting here in Croydon this evening, and welcome to Councillor Collins as well. Apologies for absence. Do we have any?
None received.
Councillor Pollard.
Apologies from Councillors Perry, Cummings and O'Connell I've received, and Hopley. And we have deputies in for various of them.
Okay, welcome to those then as well. If we could move on and agree the minutes of the previous meeting, are they agreed? Thank you. Disclosures of interest, I'll assume they are as declared, unless advised otherwise. Okay, urgent business. Just briefly, I wanted to confirm, having got the welcome cross-party agreement at Council last week, that we will be writing to the Home Secretary this week, hopefully a joint letter from myself and the Leader of the Opposition in terms of the UASC funding shortfall that this borough faces, which is completely, as we've already discussed, unacceptable. And on a more positive note, I just want to turn to Councillor Elisa Fleming, who I think has got a word about some early news vis-à-vis exam results.
Thank you. I just wanted to take the opportunity to congratulate our young people in Croydon, and indeed to say thank you to both teachers and parents alike. Our provisional results in relation to our Key Stage 2 SATs results, which were released last week, indicate that as a borough we are performing above the national average. Our results have risen from 64% last year to 66.2% this year, and the national average is 63.8%. So I really want to congratulate our young people who have been working really hard. We said that as an administration that we would be ambitious for our young people, that we would, and we will be speaking later on about delivering good quality school places, and this is testament to the work not only that has been put in from the local authority, but indeed the outcomes that we are seeing. So congratulations. They are provisional, but we are going in the right direction.
Okay, I'm sure the entire Cabinet and hopefully Shadow Cabinet will add their congratulations to that. It's the last chance we have to do that before the summer break. So well done, everybody, to the pupils and teachers there who've done the real hard work. Which takes us on to agenda item 5, and it's an absolute pleasure to introduce William and Shay, Mayor and young Mayor and Deputy Mayor of our borough. Very much welcome to the Cabinet here this evening. I know you've been very, very busy since your fantastic election results but a few months ago. One or two of us have had to go through a similar process since you were elected as well, so we do we know how you're feeling. But I think we're handing the next few minutes over to you guys. So welcome, and over to yourselves.
Good evening, everyone. My name is William Owomoyi, and I'm the young Mayor of Croydon.
And my name is Shay Williams, and I'm the young Deputy Mayor of Croydon.
Today, what we really wanted to talk about was the first 4 months of our tenure, but not only what we have done, the things that we plan to do as well. So first, we just have to take a journey back. And I'm going to talk about, why I stood for elections. I stood for elections for the young mayor because I fully believe there is boundless potential, there's overflowing potential in Croydon to be cultivated, and that violent crime rates, tarnish the image of Croydon.
And I ran for young mayor because I wanted to be that difference in young people's lives. If they had an issue, they could come to us, because adults can be quite intimidating sometimes. So having somebody at their age coming to them will feel more comfortable with them.
Going back to election night, everything was tense. No one knew what to expect. I mean, all the candidates worked exceptionally hard, through the 3-week process, putting their voices across.
I'm sure everybody here saw the infinity posters everywhere in Croydon.
And our commitment as as young mayor is basically, we just are the voice of young people and represent young people in everything they do. If there's a concern for young people, we will stand by that and work with them to realise their ideas. So the story so far, so since the election, we've been going to the forums weekly. So we have the North, East and South. But not only that, we've had influential meetings with different people. So the ones that I want to highlight are the Borough Commander. So on the 31st of May, we went to the Borough Commander to have a meeting about, initiatives that the Borough Commander has currently to stop and prevent knife crime, but also things that we could do in the future to enable a better connection with young people and police. And we got that with the YIAG, which is the Youth Independent Advisory Group, which is a panel for young people and the police to come together and collaborate every 2 months and really just talk about issues which we have in our community. We also went to the Thornton Heath Youth Day, and we were met with Councillor Jamie Orsley, and we just really had a stall and encouraged youths to look at career prospectuses and really think about what they want to do in later life, because we think it's really important that youths know what they want to do in the future.
In addition to that, as many of you can see in front of you, today is the official launch of the Young Mayors Fund. So that's like a dragon's den. So if any young people in Croydon have ideas of what they want to do that will benefit more than 10 people in Croydon, then they can come to us and they'll pitch our ideas to us and we'll make their dreams come true.
So now we're going to talk about our priorities and our manifesto and, the mandate upon we were elected on, and it kind of interlinks. So mine is really enriching and innovative activities for youths to incentivize youths to leave crime by creating connections between organizations and youths. So it's on the board there. And basically what I want to do is, I feel like there's a disconnect, and I've stated this before, with organizations and young people, and we need to bridge that gap.
To add on to William's point, there is a stigma attached to young people. We are loud, we're boisterous, we don't pay attention, but we want to break that stereotype and break that stigma by having the interactions between the opportunities that we have. In addition, my main priority was allowing young people to have access to opportunities career-wise, because if they find something that they love, if they find a career path that they love, they're going to spend less time on the streets getting up to things that aren't correct, and more time doing what they love and setting goals for themselves.
So we've talked about what we've done, but now we're going to talk about things we plan to do in the next 8 months of our tenure. One thing that I plan to do and we plan to do is have an entrepreneurial masterclass with influencers that have come from Croydon. So people who have come from Croydon and originated from Croydon, we would like them to come back and share their stories of success, and also if they could motivate or inspire young people to follow the same path they did, as well as having a young people scrutiny committee so that young people can come together, all inclusive, and really talk about the issues which they find dear to them and, and improvements which they believe they can make in the community.
Also, on Saturday, myself and William will be attending the BME Forum Youth Summit, where we will be on a panel and we'll be discussing relevant topics. In addition to that, myself and William plan on introducing a debate show in Croydon where, once again, young people can discuss the topics that are relevant in these days' society.
Thank you, everyone, for having us, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you, William and Shay. And if there are stereotypes, and there are in some places about young people, I think you two have helped shatter them, so for the best of possible reasons. So thank you for that. I'm going to hand over to Elisa to make a couple of comments, and possibly Hamida, and I look forward to joining you at the conference on Saturday. So I'll see you there, if not before. Councillor Elisa Fleming.
Thank you. Can I just say that for me, William and Shay are just two of the most fantastic and amazing people that I have met in Croydon. For their ages, they speak so eloquently, and they have a lot of passion for furthering the futures of our young people here in Croydon. So I just want to give them another round of applause and say thank you for putting yourselves forward. And just to turn to our commitment, and actually really just to highlight some of the recommendations, really to note our commitment to raising the voices and the aspirations of our young people here in this borough. It was something that we put forward as a manifesto pledge. And actually, I truly believe that by initiating the process of a young mayor, which I hope will continue for years to come across this borough, that we are showing our commitment towards young people and hearing their voices, and indeed initiating some of the things that they put forward and actually empowering them to do things for themselves. I wanted to point out 5.1, the detail around the election, and particularly just to really highlight the number of votes that were cast in total. Over 12,000 young people, 12,351 young people cast their votes, and that is a turnout of 59.59%. And for some of us in this chamber, actually, you know, the votes that they got speak for themselves. And I think that there was always a nervousness about how much engagement there would or would not be from the young people. And what's really interesting, and I really do want to highlight, is that William and Shay, their votes testified actually they were chosen not just by their classmates, not by pupils that went to their schools, but they were chosen by young people right across this borough, because the mandate that they stood on was a mandate that young people in this borough believed in. And they touched slightly on some of their pledges, but again, I just wanted to highlight and ask that we as a chamber will stand with William and Shay and help them to deliver their manifesto commitments, in particular issues to work to reduce youth crime within the borough. Secondly, issues around ensuring that there are sufficient work opportunities, whether it be work experience or paid apprenticeships in this borough for our young people, that there is access to cultural and sporting facilities within the borough. I know that Shay has been working around developing a careers workshop, which is due to take place, or is it already taking place in the Box Park? Yeah. Okay. And, you know, one of the things that they've also spoken about is really becoming engaged in the work to deliver our first youth festival. And so that's going to be a really exciting time. So finally, I would just ask that, you know, throughout the year, if you have different events that you would like to invite the mayor and the deputy mayor to, please do so. Please give them an opportunity to raise their voices where at all possible. And we have given them a standing invitation to come to all future cabinet meetings and indeed council meetings. And you'll see them very soon with their their mayoral chains. And so, again, thank you so much for everything that you're doing, and I'm looking forward to working with you throughout the year. Thank you, Elisa.
Shall we move on at that point? But what I just wanted to add myself was that we've given a clear commitment in our manifesto to the young mayor and deputy mayor. But I understand, we'll be on a cross-party basis having a look at the council's constitution later in the year, and I would hope that we would be building into the future constitution of the council the role that you've launched for us so wonderfully, so it becomes permanently enshrined as part of the way we appreciate and get representation from the young people on a democratic basis in this borough. But with that, can we agree the report? And sorry, Manju.
Can I just quickly come in, Leader? Just agree with everything that Elisa has said. Very inspirational presentation, and both of you are an inspiration to our youngsters in our borough. So congratulations to everything that you have been doing until now and your future plans. So just wanted to comment on Shay's priorities and pledges for the future.
And that sits very well with my portfolio, which is economy and jobs. And for the Council, skills for employment is one of our top themes, and we are looking at connecting young people with local businesses on work experience opportunities, and that will transform their outlook and confidence on the future. And so we are looking at businesses providing career days, a typical day at work, integrating their work with the classroom studies, which the teachers prefer in the schools. We also set up the Future Place Board, which you're going to sit, the Shay is going to sit on, and I understand the next meeting you won't be able to attend, but William, you're going to attend the meeting of Future Place Board on the 18th of this month, so looking forward to a meeting. And so that Future Place Board has the large businesses, SMEs, and also the Croydon College and John Ruskin College, and then also the community and voluntary sector are also part of that board. So all I want to say is really looking forward to working with both of you and also Elisa in their future plans, and see what we can do to achieve your pledges and commitments. Thank you.
Thank you, Manju, and you've now provoked colleagues into debate, which is great. That's why you're here. I've seen Hamida, then Councillor Pollard, then Maria. No, just Maria. Okay, Maria, but Hamida, then Maria.
Thank you. Like Councillor Shahul Hamid, I just wanted to comment on what both William and Shay have said. I mean, really just to endorse, to begin with, what Councillor Fleming and Councillor Shahul Hamid have said about our Mayor and Deputy Mayor, just to commend the way in which you have come into these inaugural posts. I mean, we've all seen for ourselves this evening, some of us have seen you in action previously, but I know also that your reputations very much precede you. I've heard, very positive comment about the contributions that you've made in conversation with council officers and community members, so your impact is already well felt, which is fantastic. And as Councillor Fleming said earlier, frankly, your mandate in terms of the turnout, not just some of us, but is what we can only dream of around this table in terms of 60% of your electorate. I just wanted particularly to comment on William's chief priority around serious youth violence, and to provide you with some reassurance that this administration absolutely shares this as a major priority for us, and I'm very looking forward to working with you both on that, and really welcome your work to break down those barriers, as you talked about, William, between organisations and young people themselves. And in that vein, one of the commitments we made in our budget for this year was a £250,000 community seed fund to support initiatives that can, in the round, be tackling this challenge for us of serious youth violence much earlier on. And I know that Councillor Fleming and I are very keen to involve both of you in that process, and look forward to that.
Hamida, indeed. Maria.
Thank you, and it's great to see William and Shay here this evening. I was delighted to attend the event where they were elected, and I was just so impressed by all the passion and the enthusiasm that was expressed on that evening, and really impressed when I heard how they ran their campaign for election, and I think certainly we could learn something in election campaigns from them. We would very much as a group like to invite them to address our group to discuss their priorities with us, so we will try and arrange that, because we very much want to support this initiative. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria, and I'm sure you won't be trying to get them to run your future election campaigns at that meeting. On which basis that sounds like a sound idea. Shafi.
Thank you, Leader. I had the privilege to sit around the same table with Shay on mayoral dinner. We had a small talk, and I'm really impressed with her, ideas. And when I said, "Would you like to join a political party and be a councillor in future?" I said, "Oh no, my priority first is to become a lawyer. Then I'll see." So we are waiting for that. But can I make a little bit different comment? I remember long time ago when we actually asked about the young mayor of the borough, if you remember, we were told that there is no appetite of that. But I'm really pleased to see that more than 12,000 people actually voted for this new young mayor and deputy mayor. I'm really pleased. So sometimes we have to swallow our pride and admit that we did not pursue that much. But later on, when we had second spell, we raised this issue, and I must say, although I'm not saying it in front of David Butler, but the way he took on the job and did it on behalf of all the council, I think I should congratulate him for pursuing it and his team and making it happen. So thank you, David.
Yeah. Did a phenomenal amount of work, David and the team, and it's hugely appreciated. Okay, shall we... Vidi, I'll make you the last person on this.
Thank you. I mean, obviously this fantastic initiative, and we all assume it's going to continue year on year, and you're going to have an annual election. But there doesn't seem to be anything specifically in this paper that commits you to do this on a year-on-year basis. Perhaps it's just an oversight, so perhaps you might just want to give that commitment to all of us today, that this will continue.
Well, I mean, I think you'll find, as I thought you had read the Labour Manifesto, but the commitment was in that very clearly indeed. But we've also, as I made clear tonight, we are looking ahead of next year to have this in the constitution of the council, so that but it will be part of the constitutional review. So I
didn't realise we were supposed to comment on the Labour Manifesto at cabinet meetings. I thought we were supposed to comment on
you're very welcome to
papers
as well at any point. But you know, I don't think we could have made it much clearer our ongoing commitment to the young mayor of the borough. So you know, I'll move on rapidly, I think, and leave your comments where they are. Okay, can we agree the paper, colleagues? And if we can move on now to the equally important agenda item 6, the financial review. Everything that this administration has achieved, and when we've had to respond to some very tough situations in terms of children's services a year ago, has been built on the absolute bedrock of achieving financial stability for this borough against the backdrop of ongoing real-term cuts from national government. It is a huge tribute to Simon, Richard and the teams they work with. And we continue to be very, very clearly focused on driving this financial strategy forward, because, as I've said, without that stability, we can't do many other things we wish to. Councillor Simon Hall.
Thank you, Leader. I'm going to start by talking about the outturn for the last year, and before I comment on the detail of that, I just want to pay tribute to Richard, Lisa, and all the officers who've worked so hard on completing the accounts. Regulations changed, so they had to be prepared in 2 months instead of 3, and then all the audit working papers and all the audit work done in 2 months rather than 3. So the whole process has been reduced from 6 months to 4 months, and the superb work of the officers has ensured that we've totally complied with that, and we'll have a full set of accounts to discuss at GPAC later this week. So tribute to officers there. In terms of what the outturn actually shows, compared to Q3, the bottom line improved by nearly £1 million. Clearly, it did show a £5 million overspend, but to put that in context, actually, there were 6.3 million of exceptional items. So actually, without the impact of unaccompanied asylum seeker children, exceptional costs, no recourse to public funds, and the impact of universal credit, we would have actually shown a surplus in the year that's just completed. And we've been able to fund that without really touching the main general fund, thanks to a collection fund surplus, which we could recognise on the 1st of April. Looking forward now in the 18-20 period, clearly we had, in particular because of children's, but also pressures on other services, we had to put in £28 million of growth for the current year, and we're monitoring that very closely. Clearly, there are huge pressures, demographic pressures, relating to our services, and that's why the savings options are being closely monitored one by one, but also why there are real pressures on the bottom line. And that is why tonight you're being asked to, as a Cabinet, to agree that we may need to make some decisions over the summer in terms of some areas of policy and some areas of charging, to ensure that we can have a balanced position for the current year. One of those that continues, and the Leader mentioned it earlier, is the huge pressures that we have from unaccompanied asylum seeker children and those who were unaccompanied asylum seeker children. And to put that in context, that's at least £7 million of pressures on the council's finances. What we're also seeing in this report is the very big difference that our capital programme is making and will make, and how using the revolving investment fund to deliver a series of key initiatives, notably affordable housing, is really starting to make a major difference. And really welcome on the capital programme the new SEN Centre of Excellence that we've made provision for as part of this July review, so that we can deliver for 16 to 19-year-old SENs. Overall, as you said, Leader, the council delivering on the 283 manifesto promises that we committed to, and our overall programme relies on very tight financial management, and that is what this report reflects. Happy to take questions.
Thank you, Simon. Councillor Vidi Mohan, then Councillor Tim Pollard. Vidi, I thought you would.
Beg your pardon. Paragraph 5.5, I mean, you talked about the fact that you've made some mistakes in your original budgeting. But after that, it's not clear. I mean, is this £2 million a saving? Is it a cost? It's really unclear to me what you're referring to exactly.
OK, I'll come back to that in a minute. Councillor Tim Pollard.
Thank you, Leader. Just like to associate myself with the remarks made by Councillor Hall in congratulating the team, the officer team, on the work that they've done on this. Obviously, to deliver more in less time is very impressive and very much the watchword of 2018, isn't it? To pick up on your comments earlier about UASCs, I have raised a slightly cynical eyebrow about this idea of what's it called, exceptional items. Of course, these are items that we've been dealing with for 20 years. So we know they're coming and we know roughly what the scale is going to be, but suddenly they're outside the budget and they're exceptional. But let's put that on one side. We know that there are issues with the Home Office and funding. What I'm still not clear about is exactly what case we are going to put to ministers, because as I said in my speech the other day, what worries me slightly is the minister is sitting there with a group of civil servants who are saying that council must be chronically inefficient, they should be able to do it for this, why can't they do it for that? That is what we need to prove to them. We need to prove to them why it is that it is impossible to deliver the services to that cohort of young people on the money that they give us. I have seen the evidence that we supplied to the consultation exercise that was initiated last summer, and that doesn't, as far as I can see, doesn't actually do that job of saying what does it actually take to maintain this cohort of young people, and why is it therefore not possible to do it on the money that you give. So it seems to me we need to make a case that the minister can look at and say, yes, officers, yes, my advisors, why are they not right? We need to do that, and if we don't, if we just go in with a sort of, you're underpaying us, it's this much, we're not going to get any further forward than we did in previous times. And I suppose the other question is, where do we stand in terms of the number of UAS that we're dealing with and the number presenting and whether the dispersal system is working or not? Is that going to have an impact on our ability to claim the enhanced rate going forward? There is a danger, it seems to me, that we might end up caught in a very difficult situation where we're no longer providing sufficient volume to claim the enhanced rate.
Well, I'll just respond on a couple of those, because you started off by praising the officers, but then went down a different tack. I mean, if I can take you back only 2 years ago, when James Brokenshire was the Home Office Minister, and we had that £4 million taken off the borough overnight. The case that officials of this council put forward was so compelling that within weeks, very unusually, as anybody involved in government would know, in principle, that decision was reversed and the money came back to Croydon. So in terms of the evidence that has been presented, it is robust. I mean, in terms of the evidence going forward, it cannot be right that this council per person. It gets less funding than a borough like Kent that's also dealing with similar pressures. And they are the type of comparators that Richard, Councillor Hall and others will be working on. So it is a very robust case we're making. When it was only a few months ago we made that case to Brandon Lewis and his officials, I think he rapidly got the point. So I think it is officials at the Home Office who certainly on at least one of those occasions were clearly at fault, and it wasn't a surprise to see them not there when we went back for the follow-up meetings. And officials from this borough have always made a very clear and strong case indeed. You know, I'll just leave it at that. But do trust me that our officers are making the most robust and detailed of cases. Councillor Helen Pollard.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask a question about the capital outturn variances on page 33. There seems to be a massive variance on the place budget. From the original budget for last year was 311 million, and the revised budget is 135 million. That seems like a huge difference to me, and I just wondered if you could explain more about that. The same applies on page 42, where there's a revised capital programme. There's a slippage of £63 million. Now, I mean, I'm asking a genuine question. It seems an awful lot of money to have actually got it a little bit wrong. One other small thing. On page 33 again, if you go back to table 3, on the housing revenue account, the district centres and regeneration and safety, it says underspends due to reduced void levels, fewer gas entries, and I didn't know what gas entries meant.
Okay. Simon? Richard,
okay, just I'll do my best on all those different points. Vidi, in terms of Don't Mess, we estimated what all the bins would cost. The firmed up estimate is £2 million different. That's what that variance is. On the exceptional items, additional, as it shows in the table, of additional monies being required. In terms of the exceptional items, Tim, you know, yes, we've had US, but the scale of the shortfall is very different. The circumstances that have provoked that is very different, and we certainly didn't have universal credit and all the other factors that are also part of the exceptional items. We have provided, officers have provided detailed schedules. We also, in a letter that we wrote after the last ministerial visit, we offered for civil servants to come down and embed themselves here to go through all the numbers and to understand the legitimacy of our claims. That offer, as they had done with other local authorities, that offer was never taken up. So we have been totally transparent. And in fact, once you start on some of the indirect costs, the figures that we've quoted may even be an underestimate. So, you know, that was the point. In terms of the capital programme, the bulk of the reason for that variance is the slippage that there has been on brick by brick, but I'm glad to say that in 1819 that's really motoring, and so we're going to be delivering those homes.
Thank you. Lynn?
Thank you, Leader. I've just got a question around income. Can you tell me what plans the Council has to raise charges or introduce any new charges across service areas? Which charges will be affected, and when can residents expect them to be introduced? Thank you.
Yeah, and I'll also ask Councillor Butler to comment on the HRA point as well. Councillor Hall.
So, in terms of the charges, well, one has already been implemented with, I understand, cross-party support last week at TMAC in terms of parking charges. What we're doing is a review of all other charges. So, for example, there are some of the charges for things like licensing and planning, which are not at the statutory maximums, because those have risen and we haven't necessarily kept pace. We're going to look at other areas of income. So, for example, one of the options is in adult social care, where we provide support for self-funders in terms of organising their care, making sure that we have an administration fee, as is common with other local authorities, is an example. So those are going to be done, and obviously, as decisions are made on those, they will be announced publicly.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. Alison, on the HRA point.
Just on your question about gas entries, as a landlord, we're obliged, and we would want to anyway, to do gas safety inspections. And it would be for whatever reason a tenant or a leaseholder has failed to have us give us access, and any action that we need to take in order to get that.
Finally, I think from me, just on Councillor Pollard's point about things have generally been the same, give or take a bit, for the last 20 years, they haven't. Because for 10 of those 20 years, you saw continued real terms growth and investment in public services in this country, including local government. It is only in the last 10 years we've had an austerity-driven programme that's cut 60% from this council and every council's budget in the land, and that has totally changed the backdrop against which people are having to work by. So it is a different place to be now, as I think you know, than it was certainly 10 or 11 years ago. Can we agree the paper, colleagues? Moving on to agenda item 7, the Education Estates Strategy. Again, hugely important work. Councillor Elisa Fleming.
So this presentation is an update on where we are in terms of our education estates supply strategy. The aim in particular to ensure the delivery of sufficient school places, but also quality school places. So we have sufficient school places in... can I just check? Okay, yeah. I want to make sure it's the right version. So we've got sufficient school places in the primary sector, and indeed in the secondary, and we've also ensured that not only that they are school places of choice, but that they are diverse school places. Here is a picture of one of our permanent expansions at Heavers Farm Primary School, and there will be a little video, I'm hoping at the end, that is going to give you an update on some of the other expansions that have taken place throughout the year. Okay, so I just want to point us to our high-quality school places. In particular, we spoke earlier on around our Key Stage 2 results for our Year 6 pupils, our inspection outcome headlines. So the vast majority of recent inspections have shown schools to be either good or improving from their last inspection. Today, I can update you and let you know that Chestnut Park has been rated as outstanding. St Joseph's Junior requires improvement, and it's now outstanding. Robert Fitzroy has been rated as good, and Orchard Way has also been rated as good. We also have Heathfield, and its first inspection, it's also been rated as outstanding. And so, again, I'd say, you know, a huge congratulations not just to the pupils that attend these schools, but also to the teachers and the parents, because a lot of work goes into delivering high standards for our young people across the borough. But equally, I would say no complacency. We do have 2 schools who we've got the Forest Academy, part of the Synaptic Trust, and the Oasis Arena, who our link officers are working very closely with to improve standards so that we can ensure that all children within the borough get a education of choice. And I really am a strong believer in local schools for local children. And in order for us to push forward with that mandate, we have to make sure that every school is a school of choice so that children will attend their local schools. So, okay. And I put this in because ultimately this is what we want. We want all of our young people to be able to reach for the sky. And for so many of them, their school setting is where that all begins, where their hopes and their dreams become a reality. And we have to know that everything that we're doing, whether it is about delivering school places or ensuring that we are working with schools to ensure that the gradings that they are providing and producing for our students are of a high standard. It's ultimately all about this. So, okay, and so for our special educational needs and disabilities, you'll note the new free school, which is going to be delivered in New Addington Academy for boys and girls with ASD and learning difficulties. And I really am looking forward to the improvement that that is going to give for so many of our young people who currently may have to travel outside of the borough to be able to access special educational needs settings, purely because of the number of spaces. We've seen an increase in the number of young people who require additional support. And ultimately, the first instance is always that we seek to push for an inclusive education for all, and for those young people to be educated in mainstream settings, but where necessary and where it best meets the needs of that student, it is important for them to have the opportunity to study within the local area in which they live, and not have to sometimes travel for hours on end in order to be able to access education. So for me, that's a really important one. You'll also note the post-16 SEN provision and some of the work that is being done with Croydon College to ensure that we deliver not just an education for some of our young people who wouldn't be able to access it in an environment that doesn't meet their needs, because some of them will need an enhanced learning provision. It may be around being able to access hoists, for example, and other certain facilities. And a lot of work and discussion has gone into that, including alongside the Children's Finance Group that meets to look at how we can best spend the resources that we have, but also to work more innovatively with our partners to make sure that we're delivering the best for our young people. So, 88 primary schools, of which 29 are maintained. And I've put this up because what I'm really highlighting is our commitment to diverse school places. So 29 are maintained community schools, 59 are non-maintained, 46 academies, 2 free schools, and 11 voluntary aided schools, all within the primary setting. And within our secondary non-maintained schools, 6 are voluntary aided schools, 16 are academies, and 1 is a free school. Okay. And I put this in. This was taking over at Croydon College. And it was really interesting when I went over to go and speak to the young people over there about Choose Your Future in particular, but actually for them they were talking about the opportunity to continue to study within the borough, the possibility of a Croydon University that it would allow them to continue, and I know that work is going on to look at possible providers to be able to deliver that within the borough, because, as we said, we are ambitious for our young people. I won't go again into too much detail about the educational standards. Very briefly, I will say that for the national average, even at the early years foundation stage, particularly around our phonics screening, some of you may have heard me speak at the last cabinet meeting about our increased levels, and indeed we have been commended by the Minister for our improvement to phonics. So that our young people are school ready, so much so that we're one of the top 10 improved within the country. And we have been asked recently, we went up to London to give a presentation about how we have been, how we were able to do that. And we have had interest from authorities as far afield as Jersey who want to share in our good practice. And I think it's really important that we highlight the work that has been going on within the local authority, but indeed within our schools, to ensure that our young people are getting the best service possible. Key Stage 4, I won't go through all of them at Key Stage 1 and 2, but Key Stage 4, the attainment of our pupils is above the England average and progress outcomes are positive. At Key Stage 5, vocational outcomes continue to be extremely positive, and the percentage of children attending a good or better secondary school has risen to 90%, and 48% of secondary-age students now attend an outstanding school, compared to 27% nationally. Outcomes for our looked-after children have improved at the end of Key Stage 1. There is most definitely a lot more work that needs to be done, and we are working closely with the virtual school to ensure that outcomes for our young people are really improved. We have spoken over the last few sessions about issues in relation to exclusions, and you will see that that will be something that will be featuring very heavily, particularly in the field of scrutiny, to see how we can improve outcomes and provide more inclusive education for our young people. And I really wanted to highlight that here, because whilst we are moving in the right direction, it is important to ensure that every single one of our young people in this borough gets the opportunity that they so rightly deserve. 4 of our schools have received the School of the Year Award for Inclusive and Extensive Education, and so I'd like to say big congratulations to St Nicholas School, Riddlesdown Collegiate, St Joseph's Roman Catholic Junior School and Oasis Academy Byron for the fantastic work that they've been doing. Okay. Here's a picture of one of the, again, Heaver's Farm and the new Muga that went up, just to give you an idea of some of the stuff that's been happening. Okay, challenges and opportunities. So within it, I would say that the important things that we have to highlight is for the changing education landscape, which means that the council now has much less oversight and control of its schools. And so we're relying increasingly on being an influencer. And within that role, I feel that particularly I have to really point out the work of our link officers. I really, really cannot stress to you the amount of work that goes into maintaining that relationship between the local authority and indeed with the schools for the best outcomes for our young people. Robust forecasting. We have 6 planning areas for the primary sector and 2 for the secondary. And again, being on top of that when birth rates go up, when birth rates go down, to ensure that we're supplying sufficient school places. A lot of work goes into that. And, you know, Denise and her team, again, thank you so much for the work that you're doing, because sometimes it's not the loudest people in the room that are doing some of the most difficult work. And so I really want to commend the team for the time and effort that goes into that forecasting. And really to highlight the resources, so £25 million to be spent next year. And, you know, tens of millions of pounds have been borrowed in the past to ensure that we are delivering the best school places for our young people. And so really just to highlight that we are making the best of the resources that are available for us. And you heard me speak earlier on around the SEN free school that is coming to the borough, and again, a good example. So here are some of the new schools and the expansions that have been delivered. 10 new builds, 5 new schools, 4 primary and 1 secondary, and 1 permanent expansion. Okay. So this is the latest new build. I wish, to be honest, that we had some pictures of the inside. And again, I would urge you to go along and see this school in person if you get the opportunity, because this, I don't think this picture does it justice, but it really is like being in a magical wonderland. So please go. If I could go back to school, I'd go just so I could go here. Okay. Okay. Just a few of the schools that have been delivered throughout the years. Okay, so any questions? And this is, I just wanted to put this up for you, Jay. So this is a picture of Whisper, who is, for some of you probably won't realise, but Whisper is my new kitten who came to visit the town hall today, and we had a bit of an eventful moment where the Whisper disappeared. So Whisper is saying thank you very much to the staff for finding her, and thank you to Victoria for taking the opportunity to put that up for us at the last minute. So Whisper says hi.
Okay. All the floorboards in Councillor Butler's office were removed to find that cat. Look, we're building London's growth borough here, and part of doing that is making sure we're building the schools to support our wonderful growing young population, and that is fantastic to see, clearly alongside delivering the improvements in exam results that need to go alongside that, but tremendous work to all involved in that. I've seen Councillor Maria Gatlin, and then Manju, and then Vidi, well then we'll go round again. Shall we start with Maria?
Thank you, Leader. Well, I'm very pleased Whisper is all right, Elisa. Very important. I'm also very pleased to see the improvement, to see the Ofsted results. I think that's, as you so rightly say, a good education is the bedrock for everything going forward. So it is good to see. I'm pleased to see outstanding for Heathfield, which is now, of course, in my new ward of South Croydon. So I'm pleased to see that. I think on the video it's good to see these new buildings, but also I think to recognise that quite a few of those schools came forward under our administration, under Councillor Pollard. But it is very nice to see them up and running and hopefully doing very well. To go back, one thing before I actually get back onto the paper, which is on states and school place planning, on the thing you mentioned about exclusions, I think is hugely important. I think we need to understand about exclusions more and from what schools they are coming to. Is the link to gang violence is I think there. So I think that's very important, and also I think to look at attendance at the PRUs as well. I really would like to see the figures of attendance at the PRUs. I think that's quite important. To go back to school place planning, I do agree it is very challenging. There has been a decrease in demand for primary school places, which has meant that some schools haven't come forward, and others, I think, have gone to opened in other boroughs to deal with the demand there. So one of my questions is when did you become aware of this decreasing demand for primary school places? And on the secondary school, I do have to bring forward, of course, the situation at St Andrews, as so many people have contacted us about that. On the decant of the pupils that will be moved, I believe it's 7 and 8, year 7 and 8. 7, I presume, most of them will not have St Andrews perhaps down as their preference. But year 8, I mean, clearly it's going to be a huge change for them, and for their parents, it may well have a big impact on them. I would like to know, you say they're going to go to good schools. Can we have reassurance about that, where those schools are, and the meetings that you've had with the parents and indeed with those children, because I think that is extremely important. The other thing I'd like to mention is on the special needs and disabilities, and it's good to see all the work that's going in there. There is a huge and growing demand there, as we know. And I know that a policy has been worked on here. I think you'll also recognise that there is a disconnect between some of the parents and the council, quite a level of distrust that I think does need to be worked on. And my question is how much involvement, both in the St Andrews situation and in any policy on SEN going forward, how much involvement with the parents so they feel part of the policies going forward. I think that's very important. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. I'll take Vidi, then I'll get Elisa to respond, and then I'll take some other contributions.
Yeah, thank you. When one speaks to community groups, one of the things they always ask for is sort of community space in our schools, either classroom space or auditorium space or something they can use for their sort of various activities. So I just wanted to know, with all these new schools going up, has any provision been made to use the school space for community groups at a discounted rate? Because that's something they always come to us for.
That's a very good point. I know it works well in some areas, but anyway, Councillor Elisa Fleming.
Okay, thank you. I'll start with your comments around the attendance at the pupil referral units, and just give you my commitment to get those figures. Not only just to share them with you, but in generally, I think that in some of the work that will be coming out via scrutiny, some of that detail will indeed be available. But again, in total agreement, not only just about the attendance figures, but the importance of ensuring, and some of the work, to be fair, has already begun around transitioning our pupil referral units to make sure that the offer that is being provided create pathways to employment for our young people, because historically some of the opportunities that were provided for that cohort of young people have been really limited, and so there has been a real focus about making sure that there are pathways, and more than one or two, available for that cohort. In relation to the decrease in demands for school places, again, it's something that we're going to keep coming back to around that 5%. It's very tricky to be able to say dead on how many school places you're going to need, and there is a science to it, which I will bring Denise in to speak to very shortly. But what I would say around that area is that we monitor very closely the birth rate in the borough, and so in terms of forecasting forward, you have to evaluate how many places you may possibly need, depending on the data that is coming through from different avenues, including from the hospitals, and that is one of the resources that we use. We also have to ensure that we're able to deliver in-year places for that cohort of young people. And so it's something, in terms of your question about when was I aware, it's something that we're constantly monitoring. So it's not something that I would look at, the beginning of the year and then that will be it. We constantly, it's an updated thing, and then depending on what that data is showing, we may have to, as you so rightly suggested, some of the schools that we're bringing forward, or the school places, have been put back a year, or indeed some of the free schools have gone to alternative boroughs or neighbouring boroughs where the needs may be quite greater. So for St Andrews, I can assure you that discussions have taken place with all parents of young people involved, and that what will be happening with St Andrews is actually the issue was around the ability for the school to deliver a full enough curriculum moving forward. And one of the things that we spoke about in the presentation was about the quality of places, and if there isn't the provision to be able to deliver different options for those young people moving forward throughout the years, then it was really felt that now was a good time and that decision wasn't taken by the local authority. I think it's something that I really have to stress, that but I do think that it was the right decision to be made. Children in year 7 and 8 have been offered alternative places at very good schools. I have to again commend our school families for the way in which they have stepped up to the plate. Schools including Archbishop Tennyson, Harris South Norwood. David, can you mention the others?
Archbishop Lanfranc, St Mary's.
and Norbury, Archbishop Lanfranc, St Mary's and Norbury Manor Girls have all offered places to the young people, and indeed they will have replacement uniforms provided for them, and they have all been given the opportunity to move in their friendship groups if need be. If they wanted to take up that option. And again, I would say, thank you to David, because he has spent a lot of time hand-on, one-to-one with the parents to make sure that everybody, all needs are met in relation to the cohort. Actually, I think the biggest issue has been with our Year 6, so not within the young people that were already within the school, because Year 9 and 10 will continue to work through the school, and then at the end the school will open again, but so it's not technically closing down, but it will recommission those places moving forward as an all through, and some of that will help to tackle the issues around funding, and again, we spoke earlier on about the issues around UASC and the funding. It is something that we have to, as a council, lobby national government about, to be able to put the right amount of money into funding education for young people, not just within this borough, but actually within this country. And finally, the SEND and disabilities. Yes. I would say particularly your comments around the disconnect with parents, and it has been an issue, and I'm not going to shy away from that. We have to, and we know from the Ofsted inspection, one of the comments that came forth was around how we better engage, not just with families, indeed. And so one of the things that we have done particularly, I'd point to the second floor of Bernard Bovril House and the work that's been going on there. The SEND department has moved back into education, and a lot of work is being undertaken to build rapport with families. We're also focusing on ensuring that where need to be, educational healthcare plans are both delivered in a timely fashion, and today we have been on target and have delivered the updated education and healthcare plans on time. But what we have to make sure continues is that the quality of those plans, and as a result the relationship that is built with the parents and indeed with the young person, are paramount to ensuring that we're delivering good quality outcomes for our young people. So in terms of our involvement, it's a top priority for us. We are shortly going to be relaunching our local offer webpage, and that sets out for our parents what is available for young people in this borough, either with a disability or indeed special educational needs. And I think that is a real opportunity and a platform for us to continue to build our relationships across. And to Vidi, I would say your comments in relation to community groups, I know that this is something that is she's not here, Madam Mayor's, is very dear to Madam Mayor's heart, and I think that you're right, because schools are at the heart of our communities, and there is such an opportunity outside of school hours for those premises to be used, and you've seen today some of those fantastic new builds, and a lot of our schools, Norbury Manor within my own ward is really, really good at extending their space for community use, as indeed are some of the Harrises. But I think that there is still so much more that can be done to provide opportunities for community. And I've got an update that says that our local offer website is going to be launched tomorrow morning. So there you go.
Watch this space. I've seen from around this table Manju, then I've seen David Wood, Shafi Khan, Louisa Woodley, Helen Pollard. Is that everybody? Okay, that will go through those contributions then. Manju.
Thanks, Leader. Thanks, Elisa, for mentioning the university. And just wanted to give an update. So we are working with more than one universities to bring that provision so that, like you said, we can make sure that our youngsters stay in our borough. Croydon College obviously has excellent university partnership in place. They offer degree programs awarded by the University of Sussex and also the London Metropolitan University. However, to drive our economic growth and to deliver the skills that employers and residents want, we need a more dedicated HE provision. Hence, we are looking at that opportunities. The leader is the board member of Cost to Capital, which is the local economic partnership. So their strategic economic plan will be launched this week, officially launched this week, this Thursday. So the plan outlines our collective ambition for the Cost to Capital area, which runs from Croydon to the south coast, and sets the strategic context for millions of pounds of investment in infrastructure, digital and skills. So one of their priority in their economic plan is to establish a university presence in Croydon, because when they came out for consultation, this is one of the things we definitely wanted to be put in that strategic economic plan, which they did. So that is their plan. So really looking forward to working with you to make sure that we can deliver that project and initiative in the future.
Thank you, Manju, and we look forward to those ongoing work with Coast to Capital on that and many other things. Councillor David Wood.
Thank you, Leader. I'd say I thank you, Councillor Fleming, for that presentation, and I certainly welcome your words regarding the importance of good local schools. You'll be aware of my previous support for the establishment of a secondary school in Selhurst, which, despite an excellent bid with good partners, didn't find favour with the Regional Schools Commissioner due to an apparent surplus of places in the area. In the north of the borough, parents still have difficulty with that position. For example, at the Crescent in Selhurst, we have Year 6 children who will be going to 28 different secondary schools in September, which seems to me a rather large amount, highlighting the need of that part of the borough. And presumably the situation is worse now, given what's happened with St Andrews. So in the light of this, could I ask whether you have any, and officers have any plans to revisit the Selhurst school bid? Because I've been given to understand that the Regional Schools Commissioner might actually be prepared to look at this again if the Council is supportive. And I also believe that the partners might still be interested. So could I ask you to give an update on that and whether you have any plans to do that, please? Because I do think there's a pressing need. Thank you.
Thank you, David. I'll take Shafi, then I'll bring Elisa back, then I'll come back to Helen and Louisa to conclude. Shafi.
Thank you, Leader. It's really important. I probably repeat myself a few times on this topic, that to organize school places for reception classes, 5,400, and Year 7, 4,380, roughly about 10,000. It is a difficult job. And touch wood, and we have been planning, it's a 3 years academic years planning to have those places intact. Otherwise, very often we hear on media, this borough or that borough, they are struggling to provide school places, and lots of kids stay at school because they cannot go to their schools. So on that respect, it's really a hard job, and we would like to thank our officers for doing that, and also our cabinet members' leadership to provide that opportunity. But I would like to stress a very important point. You made in your presentation earlier foundation stage that we are 3% above the national average, and that actually proves the point that our Best Start program 0 to 5 is working, because that creates the atmosphere so that they are school ready, they go and they achieve. So that's another important point. And lastly, I would say it's really pleasing to see that we are working with Croydon College about post-16 provision for our really vulnerable students, post-16 students, and it's actually two ways. First, we are going to provide really good outcomes for them, and second, we are going to save some money because we don't have to send anyone out of the borough. It's very, very costly because we are all overspent by a couple of millions pounds for transport, SEN transport. So that's really, really pleasing. Thank you. I think that's it.
Thank you, Shafi. Elisa, do you want to respond on some of the points made, and then I'll take the remaining two contributions.
I'll try and keep it brief. To Councillor Manju Shahul-Hamid, yeah, 100% looking forward to doing that work. And I'm glad that you highlighted the Croydon College and the Sussex University in London Metropolitan that are already here within the borough, located at Croydon College, because they do a good job in delivering a high quality degree outcome. And as somebody that has used their services, I can say that it is a good opportunity for adults who maybe are in full-time employment. They have a particular focus for adults who work full-time and study in the evening. But I do agree that a wider offer that brings in all of our young people and gives them the opportunity to study where they live is really important, especially with rising costs and the cost of going to university and having to travel and go away. To know that you can go to university and still live at home will make a huge difference for some of our young people. Well, for all of them, in fact, actually. So, and equally, I welcome the support from Coastal Capital and their commitment to delivering this vision, which is going to change the lives of so many of our young people here. David, yes, we would welcome the opportunity and we would support revisiting the opportunity for a new secondary school. But I caveat that by saying that we have to make sure that there is a need for those school places. Going back to the conversation that we had earlier on, we were led by the comments from Councillor Gatland about making sure that there is a need for those. I would say that for me personally, I 100% support that bid. I think that it was a good collaboration between both the Brit School and the primary school next door. And I do think that the creativity and the opportunity that exists within that bid is most definitely something that in the future, if there is a requirement, I would hope that that good focus is given towards it. Shafi, I'm glad that you highlighted the work of Best Start. And actually, yes, you're right, it is working, and a lot of work, and we're going to be speaking later on in another paper around our early help strategy. And the Best Start very much focuses on how we ensure that there is that we deliver the Best Start. It's in the name, for our children aged 0 to 5, but equally ensuring that from 5 onwards that trajectory continues, that for families, for children, the support is there and that it's available. I'm really, really proud of the work that the Best Start team have done, and I'd like to take the opportunity to commend them, because they have really taken the challenge of thinking outside of the box and trying to make the best of the little resources that we have to both empower families and give them the opportunity to raise their voices. So, and again, you know, the same, I won't repeat the comments around the free school, but for me, I would hope that it would be the first of many within the borough, so that we can continue to deliver a inclusive education for all.
Thank you. Councillor Helen Pollard, then Councillor Louisa Woodley.
Thank you for the presentation. I just want to refer to the investment in post-16 SEN support and the work with Croydon College. I think, you know, it's a great initiative. Thank you for moving that forward. But I was wondering why Croydon College is the go-to place. You've talked about university as well, which again, Croydon College seems to be picking up. Is Croydon College the answer to everything? Because there's another college in the south of Borough, John Ruskin, where I declare initially I'm a governor. But I wonder why their expertise in working with people who need extra support is not being called on in this instance. And is Croydon College the answer to everything? And I think, if that's the case, why are the two colleges not working together, and why is John Ruskin not working with Croydon College to work on the university offering? Because I think there's an opportunity there.
I'll let Elisa comment in a minute, but the short answer to your question, good as they are, is no. But Councillor Louisa Woodley.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Elisa, for the paper. It's a really welcome the improvement in standards and excellent paper, and it's good to see that there's a continuum and the ways up, onwards and upwards. So well done to the, as you said, to the students and the teachers and parents for all their hard work, and we're in the right trajectory. However, you refer to the fact that schools are now more independent. Obviously, we have academies and free schools, and obviously the local authority has lost that influence, and we need to work with the link, the link officers. And with this independence has come a rise, an increase, and Maria referred to it, an increase in exclusions. And I was recently at a national conference for chairs of health and wellbeing boards, and this issue was raised, in particular by a colleague from Nottingham, and they gave the figures, and it was like a 300% increase in the number of students that were excluded. And nationally, it's been recognised that exclusion has a long-term negative effect on the health and well-being of these youngsters, and young people going forward, and then, and of course, adults. So and at the Health and Wellbeing Board, I'm keen to look at how we can work with schools and our partners in the voluntary sector, and it's something that we discuss nationally to see how we can intervene. Obviously, we don't have control of the schools, but at least we can have the influence, and we can perhaps work with other cabinet members and other, as I said, other partners of the Health and Wellbeing Board to ensure that we have the right type of intervention that would ensure that some students aren't sacrificed on the altar of improvement, so that one can improve without having such an increase in exclusions. But in some cases, the exclusions are necessary, and so we have to both try to intervene, but also deal with the outcome of exclusion. So something that has, I've mentioned to you that we will look forward to dealing with, as well as looking at the mental health and well-being of our young people. So it's something that we will take forward with our partners of the Health and Wellbeing Board.
Thank you. I think there will be an important piece of joint working. The exclusions are too high and unacceptably high, and it is a long-standing issue that I think needs addressing. Elisa, to conclude.
Okay, for the Croydon College comment, is it the answer to everything? No. We particularly focused and decided to go with Croydon College actually for different reasons, and it was more about the location. It was about ensuring that in terms of some of the additional work that is going to be coming forward from the growth zone and opportunities there in terms of employment and accessibility, that we wanted to ensure that our young people, whether it be with severe physical disabilities or indeed with special educational needs, that they too were really at the heart of that and are able to access it. And also the opportunity just in terms of the space and the delivering, in terms of the rebuilding of the college, there were just a lot of opportunities that existed. I would say that Croydon College is rated as good, as has Coulston College been rated, and I know that discussions are underway to talk about a collaboration between all three of the colleges to work together. So it isn't very much to see it as a singular and Croydon College with the halo. They are doing some fantastic work, but I also see those opportunities that exist within John Ruskin and indeed within Coulston College. Because especially for John Ruskin, well, for both of them, but for John Ruskin, the space that is available, and there have been discussions around, again, in terms of the growth zone, the opportunities that exist there for providing opportunities around the trade industry and what can be done there. So happy to revisit that and keep you informed of discussions there. In relation to Councillor Woodley's comments around the independence of schools, I won't rehearse it too much, but again, it is important to highlight the increase in exclusions and what that can mean. And indeed, the issue of managed moves. and what that can mean for our young people who are being managed around the state. I know that there have been steps have been taken to firm up the process around the Fair Access Panel, and David Butler has works very closely with our head teachers, both in the primary and secondary sector, to ensure that any young person that is brought before the Fair Access Panel is a panel that really looks at how we can help to give young people a second chance or a fresh start, I would say, in their educational settings. So rather than them face exclusion, an opportunity maybe for them to have an agreed move, a managed move to an alternative school setting, and maybe start again. But we have to make sure that that isn't another way to indirectly exclude a young person, you know, and to highlight both within the primary sector, I think is really important, because these are very, very small and young children. And the final comments that I would say is the piece of work that is being commissioned in conjunction with the independent chair of our safeguarding board that looks at vulnerable adolescents, and really to highlight that some of the early key findings that are coming out of that have highlighted that for some of our young people who are the subject of some of our serious case reviews, the symmetry that has run between them is that for all of them, for mass majority of them, they've all been excluded from mainstream. When I've spoken to some of our young people, including some that have spent time in secure units, they have come forward and said that actually it all really went wrong for them. Despite the ups and downs in their lives, it really went wrong when they were excluded permanently from school. And going back to the presentation of that young boy that's reaching for the stars, we have to make sure that we're ambitious for all of our young people, that we don't write them off, that we don't decide that you've had your chance and that is it. And I feel that there is a consensus in the room for us to really address the issue, and it isn't the first time that it's been addressed. I would hope that it would be the last, but we have to continue the work, and we'll come to it in the early help about how we both empower our young people, and they're gone, but William and Shay in the room, some of the work that they can do around ensuring that we're raising the voice of young people in this borough is really important, to give them the voice also to stand up and say enough is enough.
Absolutely, hugely important work here, and I think well worth having that input from around the chamber. So thank you, everybody, for that. Can we agree the paper, colleagues? Thank you very much. And can we move on to agenda item 8? Don't mess with Croydon. Councillor Stuart Collins.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I'm just going to wait for our officer, Steve Isles, to be seated. Thank you, Steve. Okay, firstly, the paper is a very detailed paper in 2 parts, really. One that discusses the successes that we've had with Don't Mess with Croydon, all the hard work of our officers, particularly our enforcement officers, and particularly those members of the public who have worked with us as street champions, and all those that have helped in community organisations trying to keep the borough clean and spread the right messages. It talks about the prosecutions, etc., and I'll go into that in a minute. But the other part of the paper is talking about the South London Waste Partnership, Lot 1, and relevant changes to services. And the first thing to say is, though, for those that aren't aware, is that what is the South London Waste Partnership? The South London Waste Partnership is a partnership of 4 boroughs, Merton, Kingston, Croydon and Sutton, and ourselves. And the idea is, by working together, you can get synergy in services, save money, and obviously be more efficient in terms of working with the circular economy. And what happens on that committee is that our senior officers all meet, discuss with the relevant contractor, which is Veolia, who won a 24-year contract with an 8-year break, the different services that we'll provide across the 4 boroughs. The first part of the contract of the services, the change in street services, which is relatively new. That started in March 2018. Croydon Council supported that change in the street cleaning services with some capital investment so that the partner, Veolia, had some mechanical street sweepers and more efficient machinery to do the actual job. So that was included things like the vacuums. Now, that only started in March. It's been met with mixed success. I mean, one of the things we do as Croydon, probably compared to the other 3 boroughs in the partnership, we actually monitor to a far greater degree than any of the other boroughs, including the Cabinet member myself, going out on numerous visits, sometimes to meet residents that aren't happy with the service, other times to meet residents that have got ideas. And I would say it's new, so it's fairly mixed response. I think in some areas they're succeeding. But what I have said on the South London Waste Partnership is I do think that we need a vehicle to be able to discuss at that meeting with all the partners Veolia's performance, because I'm a little bit concerned 8 years seems a long time before you can actually react if they fail to deliver the service. Obviously, our key for all 4 boroughs is they actually deliver the service, but we are on to them on that. The 2 key changes in that particular part of the service were that when they actually clean the streets, it's to be cleaned to grade A at that particular point of clean, but most importantly, it's to be kept to the standard of grade B all the time. So that does take quite a lot of monitoring, and it also means that we have to make sure that Veolia's managers, who manage those street sweepers, are doing their job properly, and that's one of the things the monitoring officers are working with their managers on. And it's also a contractual obligation for the street cleansing sacks to be removed on the same day that they're actually left on the corners to be picked up. That has been a little bit more successful. I would say 60–70% of those are now picked up, whereas in the past we were only down about 30–40% being picked up overnight. So they are definitely improving in that area, but they've still got a way to go to make it 100%. So again, it's a new service. Again, we're going to keep on to that. We then move on to the changes to the waste collection service, which is operational from 2018. That involves us being very bold as a council in terms of reducing the amount we put into landfill and encouraging people to recycle more on their doorstep. We all know over the years we've had the stories of how unpopular the tubs are on the boxes that we use at the moment in terms of the spillages, the lids going missing and the breakages on those boxes. So the wheelie bin actually takes away that particular issue. It's less likely to be got into by foxes and other animals that can smell the residue of food left in, particularly the plastics, if residents haven't washed those out. And let's be fair, not everybody puts their plastics and washes out their plastics in their dishwasher. I and my wife do, but others don't, and sometimes we do get the odd invasion from wildlife. So that has in itself been a little bit of a problem when we've been identifying the issues with street cleaning. We have seen that there has been spillages by the operator. They're obviously operating on very tight rounds, trying to get round, do things as quickly as possible. We have reiterated to Veolia that we expect them, if there are spillages, to clear it up. On the other occasions, there are operatives that don't. So we're obviously on to them to try and improve that. But if we take away those boxes, that's one particular issue that shouldn't be an ongoing issue. It'll also mean on days that are particularly windy and where the lids are missing that we won't get the same with paper and spillages flowing out of the bins when it's a really windy day. So that's, again, another advantage. In terms of the actual space difference that it will make to a resident's household, if you lined up the particular receptacles side by side, just by replacing the boxes with the 3 wheelies, you only take up an extra 22.5 inches. So that is all we're asking residents to go the extra mile on. And we are prepared to be flexible on those particular issues in that if there are particular problems or anomalies in their properties where they've had things built in like small bin areas, and those bin areas are, say, only 80 litre, and we're proposing 180 litre landfill, obviously that will defeat the object, so we will go back and review that, and we won't be imposing that 180 litre bin on those people. But also some people have modified their properties in some roads, so they haven't got that particular option, and if they can fit all three-wheelers in, we'll be asking them that they should do that. And it is important to be bold for the sake of the planet. And this will be the way that I think right across the country we will be actually moving to, because the talk amongst the industry is that this is the way forward. Most of the boroughs that have tried this have seen a significant increase from the recycling rate being only in the 30s across the UK, up and well over 50%. Sutton just brought in one wheelie for paper and glass, and then later on allowed residents to, if they wanted to, for plastics and tin, and their recycling rate went well above 50%. So I would say to residents, it's very difficult for the council to introduce a bespoke system based exactly on your property and your wishes, because obviously there has to be a synergy in the way the operator can do this, and the operator believes that this system will save each of the boroughs £5 million per year, so it really quickly becomes financially important. Why are all the boroughs in partnerships like this, and why did the Conservative administration put us in the South London Waste Partnership? It was because of the challenge of austerity cuts, in that all boroughs were asked that they had to make efficiency savings, and therefore by working together in partnerships, that's why we are going down that line. And I would say as well that I think it's very important that residents note that if they have got concerns, this council has made sure that we provide a dedicated email line at wasteservices@croydon.uk, and we've provided a phone line. That's more than any of the other boroughs that I'm aware that have introduced these type of systems and have done. And we've also made sure that there are road shows to go out and tell people, you know, what the service is about, why we're trying to avoid putting so much landfill into landfill sites. We've all seen the Blue Planet, in which we've seen these landfill sites and the breakages spilling into our oceans and polluting them. It's time for us as a council and us as a nation to play our part in saving the planet. And I would say respectfully to those who think it's about what's suitable for them on their doorstep, and it's just about their opinion. It isn't. It's more important that we do our bit to save the planet. But what we will do, having said that, is we will discuss this with residents. But, you know, we're doing this for the right reason. It isn't the end of the world if you have 3 wheelie bins in your garden and you don't like the look of it. At the end of the day, once you've had the system and it's been up and running for a while, you will get used to it. And perhaps some of us, if we are recycling more, when we see the increased recycling rate, we'll feel proud that we've played our part in Croydon. But as I've said, our officers are extremely dedicated to making sure that, you know, we do what we can for residents where there are logistical problems. For those that are elderly and vulnerable, your assisted collections will continue. So that means we will go to your doorsteps and take your wheelie bins to the trucks, and our operatives will place them back at your curtilage, as they will do for all residents in the borough. So please work with the council on this. We can do it. Croydon's got a great record of trying out things. It will be under constant review. So we'll be seeing how things work, and we'll be discussing with the contractor, you know, how they can best make it work. If there are areas where the contractor is not putting things back at the curtilage, our monitoring officers will be onto them. And the new Veolia vehicles that are coming in to operate this service have 4-way cameras on, so that we can monitor the behaviour of the operatives while we're doing it. So we will be on top of them. And moving on to the really important part is working with young people about taking pride, and obviously changing the attitudes regarding recycling. We're on a visit at the moment to over 55 schools. We've appointed a dedicated recycling officer, which is the first time this borough has done that, to go and speak to residents and go, most importantly, to engage with those young people. On Wednesday morning, I'm at Winterbourne Girls' School to present prizes on their recycling competition. So the youngsters of our town are really buying into this. And it really is important that we target the opinion makers and the formers, you know, the people that influence the issues around the circular economy and recycling. So Croydon has responded to the Mayor's draft London plan, and we're highlighting key areas where we believe that we can educate residents. In terms of how we'll see how how things are working with those residents that aren't recycling, part of the
deal that we're doing with the contractor is that they will be flagging up those properties in the town that aren't recycling. We will leave them warning in notices to say that we have noticed they're not using their recycling bins and their landfill bins are filling up. So we will be going back to those people via, firstly, the contractor, and then secondly, our enforcement officers and and the staff that are going to be backing them up in the education team to say to them, you must start recycling. The reason your landfills bags, you've got too many landfill bags, is because you're not putting enough in your recycling. For those residents that are a little bit worried that the 180 bin won't be big enough if you've got a family of 5, what we're going to ask you to do is just to see how it works for the first couple of months. See if you can get the amount you're putting in your landfill bag to go down. But if you have a property of 5 or over and it's just not working for you, we are prepared to go back and perhaps offer you the 240 litre bin. But we want to say to you all out there listening, please try it first. Let's see if we can get it working, because I'm sure a lot of you will be surprised when you see the capacity you've got on your doorstep to recycle and you concentrate a bit more on what you're putting in your landfill bag. We can do this together, everybody. We can do it. Steve is here to ask any of the technical questions regarding bin size and dimensions. I had learnt most of them off by heart, but it's been a fraught day rescuing kittens and also tried to remember all the details about the bins. But in terms of the costings, Steve and his officers, this is something that Veolia have agreed with us. So they have agreed that £5 million will be put back into the contract. So really the onus is on them. They've agreed and signed it on the paper. That saving is actually being achieved. And I think it's very important that we note that, because it means we can protect other services that may have, if we hadn't have done that, been at threat, because we'd have to make so many efficiency savings because of austerity. But this isn't really about austerity, this one. This is about working together to increase the recycling rate. So willing to take any questions, and Steve is here to ask the difficult technical questions around the industry that I may not know.
Thank you, Stuart. And, if we are going to become London's greenest borough within the next 4 years, then this is a huge, huge step that we're taking. And I think the record, what are we on now? 97% of fly tips cleared within 24 hours. Who would have thought we'd have been there a couple of years ago? We've learnt the lessons in terms of the failures in Sutton. So yes, they made the change there, but they didn't have the planning around the bins. The meticulous plan in the almost military-style operation we're seeing rolled out across the borough now, which is hugely impressive. But we had as a key plank of our manifesto that the unacceptably low rate of 38% recycling, when 70% of the waste in this borough could be recycled. And we've committed, some might say, to the very modest target of taking that over 50% within the next 2.5 to 3 years. So this is absolutely a huge statement with more to come in terms of how we truly turn Croydon green. And hopefully to support that, Councillor Vinnie Mohan.
Yeah, thank you very much. And of course, we all support increased in recycling. I mean, we left it at 42% in 2010. So anyway, that apart. I just want to start with one point of clarification. Why did we join the South London Waste Partnership? It was because Gordon Brown, your Prime Minister, decided that all boroughs had to have, take care of their own recycling, and the best way forward was get into a waste partnership. So it was because of his policies that we got into the SWLP. It was nothing to do with cuts by the Conservative government. Anyway, I have a few questions. I have a few questions to ask you. One of the things all of us have been getting in our mailbag from residents is issues around space in their frontages or in their back gardens or wherever to accommodate your additional 3 or 4 wheelie bins. Now, I hear what you say about the fact that you'll be flexible and the fact that you'll speak to residents and you'll try to take their needs into consideration. But can you guarantee individual residents, every individual resident, that none of them will be actually forced to take in a bin or larger than what they need? Or is it something they will have the final say on, or is this something the council will impose on them? Can you give them that guarantee today? Secondly, you talk about paragraph 6.7, you talked about spillage and the wind blowing the tops of the recycling boxes and all that, which is why you feel the wheelie bins will be better, which is probably right. But again, can you guarantee residents that this will not be used as an excuse to actually cut their weekly or the frequency of their street cleaning? I then want to turn to paragraph 6.4, which is the sort of justification you use behind your policy, which is, larger recycling bins will encourage people to recycle more. Yes, there is a logic to that, but the fact is, a large majority of Croydon residents do actually recycle, and they recycle very responsibly. And the problem we have is that there is a select few people, or especially those living in HMOs, for a variety of reasons. I don't think we should be blaming people. For a variety of reasons, there are certain areas where people tend not to recycle, and they tend to dump everything in their large landfill bin. Now, what specifically in this policy is going to address that? And it's really, if you tackle that issue, that's where you're going to get your recycling rates up. Because, as I said, a large majority of households do actually recycle to the limit. And my final question is around cost. I mean, you did talk about your £5 million savings, but ironically, just a few papers ago, we heard that you've actually messed up your costing, and you're going to actually hit the taxpayer with an additional £2 million of costs. So, I mean, you talk about savings on one hand, on the other hand, you've just whacked up the cost of this. So, could you please explain that? Thank you.
Councillor Mohan, the only people that have cut any bin services in recent years in this borough was your administration and your former partner in crime, Councillor Thomas, who cut the weekly bin collections. Now, look, Gordon Brown, he's been responsible for many good things and one or two other issues, and he's taken responsibility for them. But the idea he's had anything to do with the rollout of bins in South London is taking political credibility to, I don't know whether it's new heights or new depths. Quite extraordinary, as is the idea that you absolutely know Councillor Collins has never promised 130,000 people or households a bespoke bin service to each individual house, but he has said he'll look at the issues where they need addressing. So quite an extraordinary contribution. Before I bring Councillor Collins in,
can you be honest about why we went into the SWLP rather than just
the way it works is I chair the meeting and then I'll bring you in. Thank you very much. Is there anybody else on the opposition front bench who wants to make a contribution? Otherwise, I'll come to Councillor Collins to answer the question. No, right. In which case, Stuart.
Yeah, I'll answer the bit about the capital. Simon's going to come in and actually mention that, but I had explained that obviously we would have been paying for new bins anyway because the contract started in October 18. You have to pay for that part anyway. So the saving itself is on top, takes into account the £2 million anyway. So we get it back in revenue costs. One is capital, the other is revenue, and Simon will explain that. Just to make sure that on your point regarding street cleaning, I think you meant to say, would we cut the frequency of recycling collecting? But what I will say categorically now, there's no intention to cut street cleaning whatsoever. Obviously, it will make the street operatives' job a lot easier if there's not so many spillages, and they can perhaps concentrate a little bit more time on the niceties of the street cleaning and making sure they do a bit more weeding, making sure they spend more time on the street, which we're going to be expecting them to do. And we'll have the argument they've got more time now. And I'll categorically state there will be no change in, no cut in frequency of the recycling collections. But having said that, if a resident hasn't filled up their box, they don't have to put it out, each fortnight. If they wanted to, they could put it out when it's full. So that also gives them another option. And the option around making people recycle more is the change in behaviour that the smaller landfill bin will make, because it forces the resident to think about what they're putting in their landfill bin. So that means that they will then start to transfer what they're putting in their landfill bin into their recycling bins. That is the whole behavioural change issue that we're trying to do. And this isn't an issue that politicians have discussed. This isn't an issue or an idea that's come from politicians. This is an idea that has come from the industry, the experts that work in those fields. Now, I'm not going to sit there and argue with those experts, but what I am prepared to do is to take their word and actually see how it works. The next issue is about the bespoke service. We cannot guarantee to every individual that we're just going to do what you want for your house, because we can't run a service like that. And as I said in the speech on last Monday evening, is that you cannot base a service around the individual's opinion in that house, because if that individual moves and somebody else or a family moves into that property who recycle more, who actually might actually like wheelie bins or might have a different choice of what they feel is best, then we're in the situation of the council having to react to that and go back and get those bins to them. So it's better off that we look at, well, the logistics of the property. And I have been on some visits, and I would say that 80% of the visits that I've been to, after I've had a discussion with residents, they do actually accept that they have got enough room on their driveway to be able to put the 3 wheelie bins there. So, as I said, it's only an extra 22.5 inches that's needed for this when you put them side by side. So, obviously, where it's totally logistically impossible, and, for instance, they haven't got currently a wheelie bin for their landfill, then obviously those properties will probably be exempt anyway. And where they have got need an assisted connection, that will continue as long as that elderly or vulnerable resident's there. But what I would say, Vidi, is let's work on this as problems which inevitably will occur with any new system as large as this occur. We'll work with councillors, the officers will be there with you, working with you. We'll go and talk to residents on their doorsteps about the issue. But the key one you said, which is those that are not recycling properly in the north of the borough. As I said, the contractor is expected now to flag those up. They're going to have like a little sort of tag that will be put with an information tag that will be put on their bin if they've not been recycling, saying to them, a bit like, this is a yellow card, you need to be thinking about what you're doing. If you're not, we'll come back. There'll be a second intervention, and then we will actually try and go down the enforcement method to make sure that some properties are actually recycling. But in answer to your question, can anybody just opt out of it? No. It's a system we're providing for the whole borough, and we expect residents to play their part in opting in to save the planet, and that's our view. And we'll look at it and we'll review constantly.
Thank you very much, Stuart. Can we agree the... Oh, sorry, Simon.
Just very quickly, Vidi, as I explained earlier, the estimated cost of the bins has increased by 2 million, but put back what was said before, there's a £5 million a year saving as a result of this new system. So an extra 2 million of capital over 3 years is totally swamped by the £5 million a year saving.
And just to add to that, the estimated decrease in tonnage that we will put in landfill, if we got around 160,000 tonnes reduced, we would save a further £2 million. So it's really important that we look at the amount we're putting into landfill. If that comes down, we make savings more and more. So it should be a winner all round.
Highly efficient Labour Council, I would suggest, in terms of the finances around this. I'm going to take Councillor Scott, but no, I did say, did we have anyone else from the opposition? And there was a clear no. Councillor Scott, to conclude the debate.
Thank you, Leader. Can I just quickly say it's great to see the work that Jerry Ryan, the late Councillor Jerry Ryan, really started in this borough to drive forward in terms of recycling, introduction of wheelie bins and such measures, being continued in such a positive way. Because at the end of the day, we are all in this together. The fact that the suggestion that anybody should be able to opt out of trying to save the planet is frankly crazy. We should all be working to increase recycling. Anybody doesn't get that needs a little bit of education, needs a little bit of understanding that we are at the moment poisoning the air, poisoning the soil and poisoning the seas, and we all need to be working together to stop that. Can I ask a very, very quick question? It's great that we're targeting a 50% recycling rate. Do we have a stretch target? Where do we think this could potentially get us to? We won't necessarily hold us to it at this stage, but I think it's important that we are continuously stretching ourselves to make sure that recycling is pushed up and up and up.
Steve, do you want to take a punt at that?
51. The reality is, if we can divert the waste that is generated at the household, which is roughly 70% of it can be recycled, if we can get anywhere near 60%, I think we've done a fantastic job with the provisions we're providing or propose to provide.
And I think if we can be doing that at the same time as playing our part in terms of reducing packaging and the actual demand for so much of the waste, both recyclable and landfill, then we really can take a lead on this. We're coming from a way behind, but we'll take a lead on it. I'm going to now move on. Can we agree the paper, please, colleagues? Thank you very much. Okay, because we've got an equally important paper here in terms of our early help strategy, and this is very much a progress report on the work that's going there. Councillor Elisa Fleming.
Okay, this is a really important piece of work around the delivery of our early help strategy. And I would ask that we note the progress that has been made in developing a Croydon partnership early help strategy. And I really stress that because we really have to ensure that we're highlighting that the opportunities to provide early help and the work that is delivered through our universal services is everybody's business. It's not just the business of the council, but also the business of our partners to ensure that we are providing the earliest support to families, to children. Our vision is that all children and young people, and I'm going to keep repeating it over and over again because I want it to be embedded into all of our minds, that our vision is that our children and young people in Croydon will be safe, healthy and happy, and that they will aspire to be the best that they can be, because truly the future is theirs. And throughout the presentations that have come forth this evening, so many of them have been centred and focused around improving outcomes for our young people, but also about building resilience within communities and within families. We want to empower individuals and communities to be independent. We want residents to benefit from being able to access more locality-based services. So rather than, thinking to themselves, it's not a one-size-fits-all, where can I go to be able to access the support that I need? You should be able to access that within your own individual community and also in many different ways. It's a shared partnership approach to provide a collective delivery of both our universal and our early help services. And that includes the funding, and I think that that's important that we highlight that as well. We touched on earlier the comments in relation to Best Start. A review was undertaken earlier on in the year to look at what was missing from our early help strategy and what needed to be delivered. It commended very much the work that had been begun within Best Start. And I highlight that to say that acknowledgement was given on the back of Ofsted to our recognition that more work needed to be given in relation to our early help strategy within the borough, and that work had already begun. But in terms of then building on it, moving forward, the years up, we said from 5, and in particular that there is a huge vacancy, a void from 10 years and up for our young people, and we have the largest number of young people in any London borough. So really making sure that we're working effectively with our partners to deliver depending on the cohort, the right needs for that family at the time. I'm going to just touch on the youth offending service, and in the paper it highlights the large number of young people, and I would say one of the things I really want to point out is that that is linked to the fact that we have the largest number of young people and is not a reflection of our young people within the borough, and I do think that that's important to highlight. But again, in terms of opportunities for those young people within the youth offending service, that there is opportunities, whether it is that we are talking about links in relation to school exclusions or opportunities in terms of apprenticeships, and long-term employment. We have to make sure that this early help strategy, in conjunction with our partners, provides opportunities at every level. On Thursday, we will be meeting, there will be an early help workshop in Bernard Weatherall House that brings together all the individual agencies and indeed some of the community groups as well, to talk about what our shared approach to forwarding this strategy will be. And there will be really kind of in-depth conversations with the aim that by the Cabinet in September, we will be able to come back to you with an agreed approach, because the strategy will need to be taken through the individual governance of the partner agencies, and then hopefully to be rolled out in autumn. And so this is really just asking that you are aware and note the progress that has been made, and we will update you later on in the year.
Thank you very much indeed, Elisa. Just a reminder, we've got these documents here if you want to follow up on the Young Mayors Fund from the start of the evening, but very important. I hope to see everyone take one of these away. Back to this paper, Councillor Pollard.
Thank you, Leader. I must admit, I found this paper rather underwhelming. It's a very important area of council business. It's clearly going to be even more important in the future if we're to ensure that the problems that have beset our children's services in the last 18 months aren't repeated in the future. So this is a really important area to get right. And of course, it's not the first time that we have tackled this issue, so it is building on a certain amount of existing practice. But what I suppose I was disappointed about this paper was it's rather unspecific and unclear. It's full of very laudable ambition, but it isn't really. It doesn't, fill you with confidence that this is a well thought out road plan to having a really significant strategy in this area. So I was just very disappointed. I also tried to approach it from the perspective of a concerned member of the public who has been following the Croydon children's social care issues over the last year or so, and say, what would an ordinary member of the public make of it? Would they actually understand what we're trying to do, what we're trying to achieve, how we're trying to do it, and what we've set, and what progress has been made so far? And I'm not sure they would. So I think we need to be a bit clearer. We need to be a bit more focused, and we need we need to really give people confidence that we understand where we're going with this strategy. Because my personal view is this paper does not achieve that.
Okay, Maria, did you want to add anything?
To say this is an absolutely key policy to get right, because I think, as Councillor Pollard said, and I'm sure everyone would agree with this, unless this is right, we won't get the pressures diluted on assessments and then children in need. We really do need to get this right. As we know, it has taken some time at the Improvement Board. As you know, this is, I think, the second attempt to do it. I do agree it must be a partnership. They have to sign up to it, otherwise it simply won't work. But there is a degree of urgency, I think, that perhaps this paper does not show. And I think, it is down to you, Councillor Fleming, to really push this, because we do need to see this, and as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll try again, as I did at the previous agenda item. Anybody else from that end? No? Okay. Elisa.
So for Councillor Pollard, what I would, and I really stressed that at the beginning, is that this is a report for noting in terms of the direction of travel. Councillor Gatland has, I'm glad, ended on the note that actually one of the things that we really, really have to ensure that is done this time, and like you said, in the past there have been under both administrations, actually, there have been tries, let's say, at how we were going to create this partnership working in terms of an early help strategy that actually haven't been successful. And the issue has been that the buying has to be from all partners, and that's why until there is agreement through all partners. If we present this paper and say this is the early help offer, then what we are saying is that as a local authority, we are responsible for delivering universal services, and we are not. We are responsible for working in conjunction with partners and with community groups to be able to ensure that we empower our families and children to access support at the point of need at the earliest stage. And that is what we are going to do moving forward in conjunction with everybody else. The business of the local authority in terms of children's services is to take more of a targeted approach in terms of delivering support where it is needed at the higher thresholds. And indeed, some of the issues that we have seen in terms of children's social care, in terms of the demand at the front door, have been driven by some of the issues that possibly can be resolved outside of children's social care in terms of building resilience for families. And, you know, Thursday, it's 2 days away, so 2-3 days away. That's all merging into one. And so, you know, I think that in terms of urgency, it is at the forefront of our minds, and it's the next cabinet meeting when we come back in September. So, to be fair, you know, in terms of priorities, it's there. Governance of the Croydon Partnership Early Help Strategy, the delivery for us is going to be something that is at the forefront of all of our minds. The strategic leadership, and Councillor Gatland, I'm moving onto your comments now, just to assure you that, and you also will be sitting on that board, I'm sure, that the Children and Young People's Partnership Board is going to hold the responsibility in terms of the delivery of our early help strategy, and it is the board that I chair as the lead member. So in terms of, you know, real oversight of what is happening, I can assure you that that is there. The board is aligned to the Children's Safeguarding Board, and also to the Improvement Board, and also reports to the local strategic partnership. So in terms of the link up and the buying from all of the partners, the governance structure is there. And just, you know, I'll end on, what are we trying to do? I'll go back to our vision, that our children will be safe, healthy and happy, because the future is theirs, and we have to make sure that they're able to access that support, not just the children, but families, because, you know, you said it, and it came from one of our community providers, where she said that, you know, children aren't hatched. You know, they come from families. And so for us, the best thing that we can do is to help families to be as resilient as possible, and understand that depending on the family, they will have different needs, and that they don't all have to access support in the same ways.
Okay, thank you. The paper's for noting. Can we note the paper, Cabinet? Thank you very much. If we can move on now and receive the reports of scrutiny, two very, very serious issues and well thought out pieces of work here indeed. Councillor Fitzsimons, anything to add at this point?
Thank you, Leader, for the opportunity. But I just do want to sort of highlight the work that scrutiny committees have done on issues regarding the trams, and also to the changes to the railway timetables. I'm assuming that everyone here has read it, and it will be sent off to various people, not just the council, but also in terms of the trams to Transport for London. In 3.3 on page 121, I want to highlight regarding the trams about the fact that as well as the immense pain and damage done because of the accident and the deaths that it caused, and particularly to the people of New Addington, it also brought up the question about who is championing the trams. And one of our main recommendations is that we call upon the Council to re-establish its original role as the champion of Tramlink and its expansion. And that, in a sense, to take that back from Transport for London, who have singly failed after the last 20 years to deliver any expansion. In regards to the train timetables, it's clear that there's an industry-wide failure. That's not just down to GTR, and it goes all the way up to the Department of Transport, about the assurance process in regards bringing in new timetable changes. And it is noticeable that even within the last week, the autumn timetable has now been scrapped. And it's also abundantly clear that both the passengers and publics of Croydon, but also industry and business have been severely affected by the incompetence of GTR. And the fact that GTR failed to attend scrutiny on the grounds that there was some review going on, even though they attended another scrutiny meeting the day before. And then subsequently we found this week that there was a gentleman in a very senior position on GTR forcing people out of carriages from Croydon. Shows you how their public relations are not just abysmal, but are also a slap in the face to local democracy. So again, we have a series of recommendations both to GTR and Network Rail, but also to the Department of Transport, who ultimately are the arbiters and the people who set the terms for these franchises and are the ones that ultimately should be held accountable.
Thank you, Sean. I mean, I think on the tram issue, we've been huge partners, I think, as City Hall under both managements, but we do want to see a significant uplift in the ambitions for trams. If we're going to truly deliver that Green Borough piece, then we want to see the hugely successful tram network expanded beyond the planned Sutton Link. Welcome that will be to allow the people of Sutton to come to Croydon and enjoy our facilities here. But we do need to see a significant expansion of the tram beyond that. I think on the timetable thing, the timing of the work was hugely important, and frankly the disgraceful scenes of that individual getting passengers removed from that train, if we had any influence over it, and you possibly have through scrutiny, he should be sacked. I mean, let's be quite clear, absolutely disgraceful behaviour. The commuters, the residents of Croydon have suffered more than enough at the hands of the utter incompetent running of the railway network in this borough and beyond. And it's good, I think, to see scrutiny stepping up to this, but we all need to, and I know many of us have, in terms of demanding the current nightmare comes to an end. I mean, the third timetable was launched yesterday, wasn't it, in terms of Thames Link, but no doubt we'll need to monitor that very closely. So thank you for this. Any other comments on the report? Councillor Vinnie Mohan.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm glad, Councillor Fitzsimons, you raised this issue about the sort of a tram-link champion. Now that we have two cabinet members looking after this role, can I ask you which one of you plan to be our tram-link champion? What do you see this role as? What do you plan to do in this role? And how do you plan to progress tram-link extension? Thank you.
Councillor Stuart King.
Thank you, Leader.
Paul Scott.
There are 41 champions of the tram in Croydon Council, every one of my cabinet colleagues and every one of my party group colleagues. I've already met with Heidi Alexander. I used that first early opportunity to meet with her to make the case for an extension to the tram system in Croydon. I'm very pleased that she's accepted an invitation to come to Croydon later this year so that we can make that case again, and if necessary again and again, until we get what Croydon deserves.
Absolutely, thank you. Councillor Paul Scott.
Of course, supporting the tram is also tied in very closely with regeneration. We're supporting the development of our town and the growth of our town as well, in terms of supporting increased housing to meet the desperate need that there is across the borough. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I think that's the point Councillor Stuart King made there very eloquently. We are all champions of the tram, and we want to see it delivered, because we saw a certain mayor, now retired Foreign Secretary, repeat every 4 years that he was going to expand the tram network in Croydon. And like so many things in that individual's career, he never quite got round to doing it. So thank you very much for that. Now I'm going to risk the wrath of the lawyers and say, are we happy to note the agenda item that's printed in yellow? Can we do that, or do we have to empty the entire chamber to agree that? We've got another report before we get to that. OK, we'll do the other report first then. We're going to invest in our borough, then we're going to empty the chamber. Councillor Simon Hall.
Thank you, Leader. This is a standard report. I'll just highlight two things. Three things. One is the ongoing close working with the CCG in terms of health and social care, which you're seeing in the area of OT provision in this report. Secondly is the amount of work that we're doing in terms of fire safety related contracts, so delivering on our commitments there. And finally, highlight the capital receipt that the Council is getting as a result of the progress being made on brick-by-brick developments.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. Any questions to Councillor Hall? No. Thank you very much. Can we agree that report? And I'm advised that if we can agree the minutes of the previous meeting, can we do that? Part B minutes of that. Choose my words carefully. We are agreeing those as well. Thank you very much, colleagues. Enjoy what remains of the evening. Thank you.